Hey everyone, I'm Evan, and welcome to another episode of the ProfNoctis show. This week we have the one, the only, David Vincent. It is the most incredible, unhinged, rehinged, rebirth video that we have ever recorded. It was so much fun. We dive into his past. We dive into my past because we grew up in this kind of the same area, which I didn't know before we started. So, pay attention. It's a great time. Please like and subscribe and check out our podcast format and hit subscribe on that as well so it gets automatically delivered to you. It really helps us out. And with that, Wade, what can we expect from this episode?
David loves vintage retro RPGs, and you're going to hear that love for video games throughout history that you are really going to appreciate. David has such a great way of sharing his passion. It is contagious. And I can speak for both Evan and myself when I say this is one of the most fun interviews that we have done. So I hope that you enjoy it. With that, let's mosey. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the ProfNoctis Weekly Show. Today, Evan and I are joined by the incredible JRPG enthusiast, master, collector, all things, David Vincent. David, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are y'all doing? Good to be here.
Thank
we are
you.
So good, and I am so delighted that you are here with us. I've been looking forward to this conversation. It's been a while since we've gotten to sit down and talk. Fans of the channel may not realize that I'm excited today because you are the person that encouraged me to start a YouTube channel.
I remember that.
We were in LA. We were at the Final Fantasy 16 launch party and stuff, and we're all hanging out and stuff. And you found out some of the things that I do, that I stream on Twitch, and you were like, you really need to get on YouTube because people will keep watching things on YouTube instead of just waiting for your live stream. You remember that? Yeah.
I certainly do, because I used to teach school too. I was a school teacher for many, many, many years. And it's almost like compiling a lesson plan. And it's like, if you're a school teacher, your very first year is spent creating all sorts of teacher-created materials, all sorts of worksheets or lessons or projects or whatever. And I thought to myself, he's reinventing the wheel every single year. Why is he redoing all this stuff? Just create it once. It's on YouTube. It's there. And you can just say, hey, your homework assignment is to go watch this video that I created 3 years ago. You don't have to redo it every single time.
That's exactly it. My students thank you for that, me, right? Because even this semester, like in my Final Fantasy 16 class, they are watching my streams that I did a year ago, and I'm not having to do that. I can move on to the next thing.
Exactly. You can move on to something else.
I am singing your praises literally every Tuesday and Thursday in class.
Love it.
Have you always been a problem solver and strategizer like that? Or is it just when it comes to academic curriculum?
To me, it was just kind of common sense. I was just like, why are you doing this over and over and over again? Are you out of your mind? Just do it once. Come on now,
Well, I mean, you're exactly right. Now, it had not occurred to me because I was just enjoying streaming and all this kind of stuff. But you were like,
I understand enjoying it, and I understand wanting to do it, but I also understand just the logistics and life gets in the way, and sometimes you don't want to deal with it.
Well, it does. And what's really interesting, and it's interesting that I'm able to talk about this now a year removed from that event, because back then I would have 10, 12 students per semester, right?
Mm-hmm.
That were really keyed into this sort of thing. So I wasn't talking about online community and all that stuff, but now there's a whole group of people that's really are kind of invested in this channel and stuff, and I just couldn't keep up with it in the same way. So
your channel's really grown. Good for you.
Oh, well, it's because of people like you that saw something worthwhile and giving some advice to. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
no problem.
Anyway, I'm super excited to talk to you about Final Fantasy today, but I'm really excited to talk to you just in general about video games and stuff. For people that may not be familiar with your channel, could you just give us like a brief synopsis of some of the things that you do there, what your channel's about, all that?
Sure. So basically, my channel is all about RPGs, JRPGs, from retro games to modern games. It really doesn't matter. If it's a JRPG, I'm going to cover it. If it's turn-based, action JRPG, strategy game, real-time strategy, whatever, I love them. I grew up with them. It's really what I know and what I love and what I play. And I've been playing these games since the 1980s. And I've just fallen in love with them. And it's at this point, it's like the only genre that I play. And I know that some people think that I'm like a little bit weird for that, but it just kind of is what it is. Like people will ask me like, what games do you play? Do you play Fortnite or Call of Duty or, or whatever, or the new, like, okay. So just the other day I got a MetaQuest virtual reality system thing.
Yeah.
And I was going to buy that, or I was going to play it for the Triangle Strategy port that's going on there. And then people are like, you should play the Batman Arkham Asylum that came bundled together with it. And I thought to myself, it came with Batman? Who cares about Batman? I just want Triangle Strategy. Like, I have no desire, no interest in playing any other genre, just JRPGs. That's
Well, if there's one thing that we know that the internet hates, it's a person who's having fun. So
exactly, we cannot have that. Cannot possibly have that.
You can't do it. Well, you've been doing videos for quite a while, to the point where you were like really early on the videos on YouTube, and especially some of the gaming videos. Can you talk a little bit about why and where that came from, and what made you want to start recording videos?
Sure. So it's kind of a strange story, I suppose. Whenever I moved to Las Vegas, I found myself with quite a lot of time on my hands. And I was going through, we just bought a new house, and the house was painted this god-awful realtor's tan. Every single room in the house was this like brown, this dark brown. It was god-awful. So while Ken went off to work, I painted the house, and I painted it all white, painted it all, looked really nice. And while I was painting, I had to have something to listen to, And I started listening to H.C. Bailey's Let's Plays. And I went through every single freaking one of H.C. Bailey's Let's Plays. And after I was done with that, and I was done painting the house, I thought to myself, if he can do it, I can do it too. So I went ahead and I started making Let's Plays. And whenever I started, I knew nothing about making videos. It wasn't exactly my forte. I'm not exactly computer illiterate. I knew nothing about it. I literally didn't even have a desk. And I sat Indian style on my bed with a laptop in my lap and a microphone headset from a Rosetta Stone Learn German thing from like 1994 that we had sitting in a closet somewhere. The worst microphone ever. And then I remember I was making this Let's Play for Dragon Quest V for the SNES. And I said in like one of the very first episodes, I said something like, I don't think that I'm going to be editing out random battles because I think that it's important that you watch all the random battles.
Yeah.
But the real thing was, I had no idea how to edit anything. So So like I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing, but I learned on the fly, and I did what I did, and I've always enjoyed it ever since. So that's that's my story. That's my Let's Play story. I didn't know how to edit at the time. Back in the day on YouTube, 10-something years ago, there was actually an editing program built into YouTube.
Oh, really?
You didn't have to use a separate editing program. Yeah. So I didn't have to use, DaVinci Resolve or Movie Maker or Clipchamp or whatever it is that you use. You would just you would literally upload 20 different clips into YouTube, 20 different videos, and then you'd splice them all together, and then you delete those 20 different videos, and they would come out as one video. It was a really odd way to do it, but it was actually an editing program in YouTube, and that's how I started doing it. And I made that whole Let's Play with the YouTube editing program.
That is so good. Well, your Rosetta Stone headset probably put you in the top 10% of like quality of audio for the beginning of YouTube, I think.
God, it was so bad. It was so bad.
Did you ever finish learning German, or where does that sit?
So that was a program that Ken purchased because Ken was born in Germany, and I was also born in Germany. we're both Air Force kids.
Okay.
I left when I was 1.5 years old. He stayed till he was 13.
Oh,
So
wow.
he wanted to try to re-pick up the language or relearn the language, and I kind of wanted it just to learn language in general. Never did, but we still had the program sitting in there. So
What was it like to grow up? Did you move around a lot? And how did that impact you as you kind of grew up? And how did that interact with your kind of love of games and the specific types of games that you like?
At first, we did move around quite a bit. We went from Germany to Dale City in Virginia. We went to Burke in Virginia. We lived on base on Bolling Air Force Base. And then we moved down to a small town in Georgia called Ackworth in 1987. And that's where I grew up. And it wasn't hard for me to, well, I don't know how to put this. I had friends in my neighborhood. But actually making friends outside of my neighborhood, friends in school, friends in the classroom, extraordinarily difficult. Because I was kind of the odd man out. I was the one who didn't fit in with the rest of the kids, with the rest of the boys. And even whenever I went over to try to play with the girls, I was the guy who wanted to play with the girls, So it was just kind of difficult to make friends. It was just so I was able to kind of escape into RPGs where everybody was friends with everybody, the power of friendship and all this kind of stuff. Everybody got along, and it was just this way to escape reality where people were a little bit more cruel in reality than they were in the game world.
When you were, so this is around 1987, so really the advent of the NES. And so we're talking about like the 8-bit RPGs and all those things. What are some of the specific games that you would find helped you escape best?
Back on the NES, it was the Dragon Quest games, Final Fantasy, Crystallis.
Oh, Crystallis. Oh my gosh, I'm glad you said that one.
Love Crystallis.
That was the 5th NES game I ever got. My dad gave it to me.
So I have a funny story about Crystallis.
Okay.
So this is back when my mom was kind of cool.
Don't listen, Mom.
Yeah, no kidding. So there was this small store called Video Wonderland down in Ackworth. We had to drive maybe 20 minutes. It was the closest video rental store that we had.
Time out.
And
we got to talk about Video Wonderland because
Video Wonderland?
I grew up very close to where David grew up, and
Yes,
Video Wonderland had the Cheshire
yes.
Cat.
It did. It had the Cheshire Cat. It definitely did. You remember Video Wonderland? So in the pre-show before. So
We used
hello,
to get
audience.
our Beanie Babies at the boutique store right next to
Yes.
it. Boo Hoodles.
Yes. God. So
We had
before
the
we
same
started the
childhood.
show, audience, we were talking. He was like, "Where'd you grow up?" And I was like, "Oh, you've never heard of it? Some tiny town called." He goes, "Shut up!" And I'm like, well, at first he was just kind of like stunned, and I was like, he grew up right down the road from me, so it's very, very interesting. So yeah, we went to Video Wonderland.
Yes,
and
my brother's gonna lose it when I tell him about
yeah,
this.
because other people, like whenever I talk to other people at video rental stores, they always say like Blockbuster or whatever. I'm like,
yeah,
we didn't have a Blockbuster in Ackworth, Georgia. We had a Video Wonderland. So
amazing. We rented.
We didn't have anything at Ackworth.
We rented the Transformers animated movie over and over and over again with my mother. We would go and we would check out the Transformers animated movie, and we would watch it over and over again, my brother and I, and then we would return to Video Wonderland, and then we would walk around the store for 20 minutes, and then wait until they put it back on the shelf, and then my brother and I would go, we want this one again.
Yep.
My mom was like, I need to just buy this. Can I buy this movie from you? And they're like, lady, you're keeping us in business. No, you got this thing. It was that and old Godzilla movies. Oh my gosh, we loved it.
So we kind of did something similar. Basically, I rented Crystallis, and I rented it twice, and then I asked my mom, and I was like, can I just have this? Can I just buy it? And she's like, I'll take it down to the store and ask if I can buy it. So she goes down there and she says, hey, can I buy this game? And she's like, no, you can't buy it. But if you lose it, we will charge you like a lost fee or whatever. My mother's like, oh, how much is the lost fee? Like $20. So she comes back the next day and she's like, I lost it.
I love it so much.
She goes, I lost it. And she sent it to a different worker. And then all of a sudden, the same worker who was there the previous day comes out of the back and it's like, she didn't lose it. She was here yesterday asking about it. And she's like, prove it. I lost it. I don't have it. Here's your $20. Like,
I love it so much. Mom's a real one for that. That's
Oh god. I am like 12 years, like 10 years old again in this conversation. I lost it.
I lost it. That's great.
Gosh.
So, okay, so Crystallis.
Yes.
I love that you mentioned that game because that, for me, that was the first kind of RPG, non-Zelda action RPG, I guess, that I had played, and that really kind of got me into the genre.
Honestly,
in a
I
lot
think
of
it's
ways.
better than Zelda.
Do you really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, wow. So like,
100%.
you're talking about 8-bit Zeldas or
I'm talking
like
about 8-bit
Zelda as a
8-bit
franchise?
Zelda.
Okay.
8-bit Zelda. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the two and you compare them to one another, Crystallis has so much more depth to it. It has multiple towns. Well, the first Zelda didn't really have any towns at all.
No, it didn't.
It has multiple towns, equipment that you can purchase.
Yeah.
It has accessories. It has, the boots that allow you to jump, the rabbit boots, the gas mask. It has the warrior's ring, which allows you to shoot the little bullet thing over and over and over again. It has the 4 different elemental swords. It has the magic spells.
I forgot it had all of those abilities.
It has all this stuff. It has the teleportation magic.
Yeah.
It has all this stuff, the different wise men to talk to. It was incredibly difficult.
It was very, very hard. I was too young to play it, honestly.
There were articles in the Nintendo Power all the way up until 1996 telling people how to beat Crystallis, especially in Counselor's Corner.
1996.
Through 1996.
Like we were in SNES days at that point.
Late SNES days at that point. Lufia 2 came out in 1996.
Oh my gosh, because I got an N64 like a year later or something like that.
I remember I got a PlayStation in 97 because whenever Final Fantasy 7 came out, and that was the game that I bought the PlayStation for. So because Counselor's Corner was so sick of getting all these questions about Crystallis that they actually printed a guide in 1996 in Nintendo Power that said, this is the step-by-step way that you just beat Crystallis. Shut up, quit asking us questions. Like,
man,
it was so difficult.
I'm so glad that you mentioned Nintendo Power because for those of us of a certain generation, that was our bread and butter when it came to video games.
We didn't have the internet. That's what we had.
Did you ever write in and draw on envelopes?
I did not.
I did, but they never showed mine.
Oh,
they never showed mine, and so like even back then, Nintendo didn't want me to be an influencer for them. So that was it.
Oh my god. Oh, so it's so funny that you mentioned that. I've gotten emails from literally every single company under the sun that deals with video games, except for Nintendo.
But not Nintendo.
Not Nintendo.
It's a grudge match for
single other one. Even Xbox, for God's sakes. Even owned an Xbox. They've reached out to me, but not Nintendo.
But not Nintendo. No. That's amazing. But yeah, so like I said, I'm glad you mentioned Nintendo Power. I did the whole Nintendo Power thing. But I probably would have never discovered RPGs without Nintendo Power. And we were talking in the pre-show a little bit. The second issue of Nintendo Power I ever got was the Final Fantasy Strategy Guide, and you've got it right here, right? Yeah. So for those of you whippersnappers that have never seen a magazine, this is what that is. Send these to us, right? So this is the second one I ever got. I subscribed just the issue before this, and I think it was Maniac Mansion. That was the episode, issue that I first got, right? And so I read that one. And then I get this second one that's a Final Fantasy strategy guide. Oh, there it is. That was my first issue ever. That was it. Oh my gosh, I loved it. And so in there, you've got a Final Fantasy. So here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't know Final Fantasy. So that second issue, I was like, what is this game? And so I actually went to my video store. It wasn't a Blockbuster. It was a movie gallery or something like that. Or a Video Express, I think is what it was called back then. So I rented Final Fantasy. I played it for probably an hour and got locked out in some number like box game. Do you remember this mini game?
Yeah.
I don't know how I accessed it, but I was like, I hate math.
You had to hit like A and select like 55 something times to get in there. So I don't know how you accidentally
in my
got in there.
7-year-old brain, I did it, and I was like, I hate math. I hate Final Fantasy. And so, but I was like, this game looks awesome, this strategy guide. So it's hilarious that today I make content. But
Push the A and B buttons together 55 times well aboard
How
the
did
ship,
I
and the
do
Final
this?
Fantasy puzzle game will appear.
how did I
no
do
idea.
this?
I have no
Like,
idea.
To this day, like I did it, and like I remember saying to my dad, "This game sucks. I don't want to play math at home. Like I thought this was an adventure."
Yeah.
But you
Math
were
sucks.
talking about in
Some of us,
I
all we
guess
had was math games, by the way, like Math Blaster. Like those were the games that my brother and I were allowed to play. So for some of us,
nerd alert.
whose parents were teachers, we played.
I
Math-
would have never played the Nintendo. I was just screw this. I'm going to go outside.
We
I
didn't
know,
have
right?
the
That's what we
Nintendo.
can play.
We didn't
Give me a
have
break.
Nintendo. David, we were not allowed to have Nintendo.
Oh, that's why you're a PC gamer.
Because I
That's
played
right.
Nightmare.
PC games.
That's
'Cause
right.
I played,
Nightmare.
we played Math Blaster, and so you had to do. We would do math and launch the rocket ship, and we were just like, yay!
You have fun with that.
Yeah,
We're
seriously.
making
That
up
math
for
class was-
lost time. Don't worry.
No kidding.
So you get this issue of Nintendo Power, apparently the Maniac Mansion one,
Yep.
and you
Yep.
find a contest. Tell us a little bit about the contest.
So there was the contest in this issue. We were talking about this during the pre-show
yeah.
because they were mentioning the Nintendo Power, and I was like, "Don't you remember the contest thing?" And they're like, "I don't remember a contest." I'm like, "I do." Older than y'all. So there's this
Just barely.
orb down here that you could win. It says 50 second place prizes will also be awarded. Each winner will receive a custom crafted crystal orb embossed with an emblem from Final Fantasy. Besides looking great, the fine crystal will become a collector's item. And who else knows what you might see it? And then the first place prize was to become like a light warrior and all this to explore the Caribbean. You got like a trip to the Caribbean or whatever.
wow.
Some, like light warrior thing. But honestly, this crystal orb, I think I saw it on eBay once, and it was like $50,000, something insane.
Oh my goodness.
So in order to win this crystal orb, you had to answer 2 questions. That's all you had to do. 2
Okay.
questions. And it says what's the gold value of the Masamune? So you had to get the Masamune and then try to sell it to figure out what the gold value was. And then how much did you pay for both Life 2 and Nuke? So you had to find where those were sold and then add them up and then right away and
Yeah, pretty late game
that
stuff.
in. Yeah, very, very late game stuff because the Life 2 and the Nuke was sold in Leffen Village and the Masamune was down in the Chaos Shrine at the bottom floor. Yeah. So some very late game stuff in order to do that.
So
I
did
did not
you
send the money
win
for
the
it.
orb? Oh.
If I won the orb, I would have that right now in front of me. Are you
I was
kidding
like,
me right
I was
now?
expecting you to be like, and here it is.
No, are you kidding me? Gosh. Oh my gosh. I would love that. I
And my
would love
wallet
that
got
if I actually
$50,000 lighter and then eBay.
Exactly.
No
purchase.
kidding. No kidding. But like, I mean, it would be great to have.
That'd be
but
amazing.
no. Oh man, that would just be so freaking cool.
Man,
But no,
Nintendo contests like that. Like I remember applying for so many different ones. Evan, did you ever do anything like that?
I wrote in on every like cereal box contest, like every Doritos bag, every which thing. Our magazine was PC Gamer because
Of course.
I'm sorry,
Math
we did.
Blaster Monthly.
And it was
I didn't have a home computer till like 1999. Like
Mine
it's
couldn't
all,
even play games.
I know. I remember getting a
had.
home computer and all they had was Minecraft and Solitaire. Like that's it. You're like,
no. We had a game that came.
Minesweeper. Minesweeper. and
yeah. Minesweeper. That's right. Minesweeper.
Minecraft
Yeah.
is a very different
Yeah,
game.
completely different game.
There's going to
yeah.
be one person who watches this who knows what I'm talking about, and I want you to leave a comment or something. I rarely say leave a comment. The Windows 3.1, there was a game where you were a mouse trying to get the cheese, and you had to go through this maze and like solve these puzzles, and you had to eat these little bits of cheese, and it was this little
I'm
game.
sorry, but you played the worst game.
It's all we had. Like it's all that I had was these games. Like there's nothing that we could do.
Oh my
It was
God.
just to
So
play
it's
these
kind
games.
of funny because
Go ahead.
it's kind of funny because I remember that there was this girl in class there was this one day when we had to answer attendance, and there was different ways that the teacher would be like, hey, answer attendance by saying your favorite TV show, or your favorite color, or whatever. And the one time she said, answer your favorite game. And I answered Final Fantasy. And this one girl, she said, we're not allowed to play games at our house. So she didn't have a game. She felt very left out. And I think eventually she just said like Monopoly or something like that.
Yeah.
But I remember a year or two later, I was talking with her, and she said finally her parents allowed her to play games, but it was only the Game Boy and only whenever they were on like a road trip. So it was a way to kind of shut her up, I guess. So I'm kind of surprised that your parents didn't let you at least have a Game Boy.
No, they didn't. But my brother, to make up for lost time when he was in college, where you went to college, got this.
Oh,
nice.
And so
Yeah, Game Boy Color.
I keep this on
With your
I've
Pokemon
commandeered
Blue.
it, yeah, and I've got the little light that comes out because it doesn't have the
Yep, yep, yep.
backlight. And I use this like a coffee table book. So when like people come over to hang out, they can flip through the coffee table book, or I'm like, we got a Squirtle, just run some levels on the Squirtle while we're hanging out. And so I try and do that. So shout out to my brother for purchasing this and allowing me to steal it. He found out that I had it a few days. He goes, is that the Game Boy that I bought 10 years ago? And I was like, I don't know, it just showed up. Which, you know how siblings are. You're like, I don't know. It's just blended in the memory. Have you always been a collector of things? Because as I glance behind you, I've noticed you've quite the collection of things, and you've given some really obscure references that Wade has made, and you've been like, not only do I understand the magazine you're talking about, let me present you with a copy of it from the archives. Yes. I'm surprised you didn't put on some like white cotton gloves to like get everything.
Yeah, it was literally mentioning it. I was like, hold on a second. Like, 30 seconds later, I'm coming over. Here you go.
Yeah,
you know?
Perfect.
Yeah.
When did that start? You've always been like that? Did you collect things as a kid?
I mean, as a kid, I collected stuff, but as a kid, I didn't realize how valuable it would be.
Oh, okay.
And to me, it just was kind of like, you guys know how it was. Whenever you got a video game and you were like, oh my gosh, I got Chrono Trigger. Rip open the box.
Yeah.
Boom. There it is. Like it was, and I would hold on to the game itself. I would hold on to the little plastic cartridge, and I would hold on to the instruction manual. But the box, in the trash can. Like there was just no reason to keep it. It just like that just wasn't a thing. But whenever PlayStation came around, and you know the boxes weren't cardboard, and it was just kind of there, then I was like, oh, this is nice. I can hold that. I can keep on to it. So I have held on to some of my games. I had to sell a lot of my games when I was in college. For financial reasons and things like that. But I have been able to go back in the meantime and repurchase things. Like even if I just need to purchase a box, I've been able to do that because I already have the game. I have the instruction manual. I already have the posters and things like that. But I didn't have the actual box itself, so I was able to purchase that. Because to me, I like things that make me happy, and just surrounding myself with stuff that makes me happy. You know, I'm in this room. So I might as well have things in here that just bring me joy, you know, that spark joy. So
you're Marie Kondoing yourself. I love
it. Yes. I'm the opposite of Marie Kondo because it sparks joy and I keep it. So,
but Wade and I were talking about how much your passion comes through in your content when we were looking forward to the interview. And as we've been having this conversation in the pre-show, what's really coming through to me is also your resilience and your resilience for your passions and pursuing that. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that journey for you and what it was like to develop that resilience and maybe some of the challenges that you faced and kind of how you overcame them and what it was inside of you that you developed that has allowed you to keep this wonderful, energetic, joyful personality despite some challenges along the way.
Sure. So what he's referring to, well, if you read between the lines, is what we talked about during the pre-show. I was talked a little bit about my coming out story and just how rough it was. It's something that I never really talk about on the channel. And I don't want to get too deep into it because I don't want to talk too much about my family or air any dirty laundry or disparage anybody.
Sure.
But I didn't exactly have the most happy, hunky-dory coming out story. Let's all eat cake and celebrate. Yay, you're gay! No, it was not like that at all in the slightest. It was the complete opposite of that. So whenever I talk about, like, I had to sell games for financial reasons, that was part of the financial reasons. I had to kind of do what I had to do in order to get through. And I will always be grateful for games because number one, they allowed me to get through a rough time in my life financially by holding on to them. But number two, they kept me sane because I was able to, no matter what horrible things were going on in my life, in my personal life, in my home life, or whatever, I could turn on a game and I could lose myself in that game world where everybody was happy, everything was nice, everything was bright, everything was colorful, everybody got along, power of friendship, rah rah rah. It was all good. So it allowed me to kind of keep sane and to keep a positive energy and positive outlook around life because I know that there's a lot of gay suicide, there's a lot of different issues that go on in the community, and I was very lucky, very very lucky that I had things that kept me grounded, things that kept me stable, and I do thank gaming for that. It is one of the things that did keep me alive, really, to be quite honest with you.
David, I appreciate you saying that so much. I can't tell you how many of my students over the last 10 years have had some kind of interaction with struggling with their identity, acceptance of their identity, and it really comes to fruition in our class about Final Fantasy. I remember it was probably about 8 years ago now, maybe a little bit longer, where I asked this class of 100 some odd people to write reflection papers about their own lives and relate it to the video game. And I had a couple of students that came out for the first time in those reflection papers. And it was just this really potent, powerful moment where they were able to talk about Noctis, and they were able to talk about how his journey in some ways was mirroring their own. And it was an escape for them, but it was also a way for them to reflect deeply on that. I wonder, what are some of the stories that really helped you come to a place of acceptance of self, acceptance of kind of your trajectory and pathway in life? Were there video games that really, really did that for you?
Yes, and we have to go back to the SNES era because that's whenever I hit puberty, was during that time, and the two Final Fantasy games during that time that was out in America was Final Fantasy 2, which is 4, and 3, which is 6.
Yeah.
And both of them had coming of age stories, stories of acceptance, stories of change, stories of evolution. You have the obvious, Cecil is a Dark Knight, and he just follows orders, and then he turns to the light, becomes a paladin, and he accepts the light. You also have the story of Rydia. She's a little girl. Her entire village is destroyed. She doesn't know what's going on. She's angry at the world, but then she grows up into an adult, and she's able to accept herself and become, incredibly powerful. And a story that actually resonated with me, that I don't think resonated with a lot of other people, but it did resonate with me, was the story of Edward. Edward, the Prince of Damcian, because he was kind of a coddled prince. He didn't really know much about the outside world. He was very weak. He wasn't all that strong, and he met a group of friends, and he was able to come out of his shell, and he was able to do what he could do to help them. Not only by becoming more powerful and fighting and accepting the tragedy that happened to him, but also later on in the game, even whenever he's injured in Troia, he's able to help out the party in his own way. Maybe it's not through directly fighting, but it's an indirect way to come over and help other people.
Edward's story is so surprising.
It's my favorite character from that game.
I love Edward. I love Edward.
I watched my friend play that game. I never played it like myself when I was a kid because my neighbor had a Super Nintendo. And so I would go and I would sit on the bed and he would sit in the beanbag and he would play and we would name the characters after our friends. And Edward was by far the character that I could relate to the most because he had to use different means to fit in and contribute.
Exactly.
And I just was I was like, oh my gosh, I can contribute in my own way.
Different way. He fought, and he was like the only male character really who fought in the back row confidently. He contributed through singing, through putting enemies to sleep or confusion. And then in the original Final Fantasy IV, he had the salve ability, which was a healing type ability. So he was much more of a support character. Back in the day, the male characters they were big, beefy men.
They
and
were not
the tanks.
support, yeah.
They were not support, but he was a support character. So he was different from the other men. And seeing a man who was different from the other men resonated with me. It really did. And then going into Final Fantasy VI, with its theme of love and seeing what Terra went through, seeing how she's torn between two lives. She is the human life and she is the Esper life. And she doesn't know what's going on. And she's torn between the two of them. And it was almost like me. I was torn between two worlds. I have this straight world that I'm trying so hard to fit in, and I'm repressing and repressing and repressing my true self until it just kind of exploded out. She flies away screaming like a banshee. And, it was the sort of thing with me. It just kind of comes out and you can't do anything about it. It just explodes out. You keep a bottle under wraps for so long until the pressure just makes it explode and you can't do anything about it. And that resonated with me as well, definitely.
As you're playing through that game, it's still probably, 6-7 years before you come out.
Yes.
Right? What is that like? You're playing this, you're seeing this, sensing this parody with this story, and yet there's nothing that you can do about it in that moment.
There's nothing I could do about it. Nothing I could do about it. I knew for a fact that there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I do remember maybe I was, 16-ish. I was in high school, and at one point, my parents were in a huge fight. And all of a sudden, my mother comes screaming upstairs in my room, and she slams open the door. She goes, "Are you gay?" And I was like, "No." She goes, "Good, because if you were, we're going to send you away." And then she left the door, and I'm like, okay. I just knew that there was nothing I could do about it. And then my parents continued fighting for hours after that. So I don't know what that was going. But it was just there was nothing I could do about it. And I would just escape into these games. I would escape and I would feel these stories and I would wish that something would happen. And I knew that, time heals all wounds and time does make things better. But I felt like that time for me would never come. And I'm glad that it was able to finally come. And these stories did help me kind of figure out what was going on in my life, kind of figure out what was going on in my head, and kind of be able to compartmentalize and, like I said, survive what I had to do.
You talk about the word survive, and that is what it seems like it really felt like you were doing. Wonder what advice and support do you offer to people who find themselves in similar situations, whether it's with identity or whether it's with a challenge that they're going through or circumstances that they feel just kind of stuck or trapped in? I know that you've grown a lot as a person, you've said, in your ability to deal and cope and handle those things. The games were an escape, but in those moments, what encouragement did you give to yourself, or do you wish that someone would have been able to give to you with what you were going through?
I mean, I wish that there was somebody that I could have talked to. I never told anybody. I never even told my closest friends. I never told anybody. I never felt like I could because I felt so scared that it would come out. So I wish I was able to talk to somebody. And nowadays, with the internet, you're able to at least message somebody online because, if you message some complete stranger that you happen to know, at least they're not going to be able to come back and tell your parents or tell anybody else, so you're able to get it out. I didn't have that. I didn't have any sort of support whatsoever. But I would encourage people to find some support somewhere. Looking back now, I was a teacher, and I wish that maybe I told the teacher, because there is confidentiality between student and teacher and things like that. Teachers are mandatory reporters for certain things, abuse and things like that. But for something like that where you can confide in a teacher, I would definitely recommend doing that. I, again, never did because I felt like I was so trapped and so alone and I couldn't. And I grew up in such a conservative area, that it was just almost impossible to do. But like I said, you have to find some outlet, some release, something that you can lose yourself in. And that's what I was able to do with these RPGs, with these video games. They really did help me a lot to process what was going on in my mind, what was going on in my head, what was going on in my life, and try to make sense out of it too. And it did help me to see that things do get better. I know it's a cliche to say things get better, but it's the truth. Things get better. I'm 42 years old now and I'm living my best life. I've never been happier than I am now. Every single day is a better day than the day before. It really is. Everything just get better whenever you're able to come out and accept yourself and accept yourself for who you are. Things only get better.
I cannot thank you enough for the vulnerability there, and not just for the sake of sharing your story with our audience, but just because I know that there are members of our audience that need to hear something like that. And so thank you for that. You can say it in a way that perhaps we can't, and to just let people know, hey, find somebody to talk to, and it gets better. So that's beautiful. Looking from Final Fantasy 4 and 6, we obviously have to move towards 7. What did 7 do for you? You began to talk about the PlayStation. You bought the PlayStation for Final Fantasy 7.
I did.
What was that process? I mean, this is a game that's also really big into identity and relationship and coming of age to some degree. How did 7 hit you when you finally got to play it?
7 it hit me in a different way than the other games in the series. It really did, because it was just so different. So it was just a quantum leap forward from what the other games had. It was a new system on new company. It was by Sony, and it was in the 3D, and it was multiple discs, and it had different themes.
Did you feel a little betrayed by them going to Sony instead of Nintendo? Because I kind of did.
I did. Yeah. Because to me, I was always a Nintendo kid. I had the NES, I had the SNES.
Me too.
And I remember when the N64 was coming out, I was like, there's not really any, RPGs on it. And then I saw that they were going over to Sony because of what happened with Super Mario RPG and how they got mad at Nintendo about that. So
wait, how did they get mad at
can you
Nintendo
explain
about that? I actually
more?
don't know that story. As a huge fan of Mario RPG.
Really?
So
this happened back in the day with Mario RPG. Basically, Nintendo and Square, they collaborated on Super Mario RPG, and they wanted to, put it out and everything else, and they did. But Square kind of felt betrayed by Nintendo because they... How do I put this? It happened so long ago, but I remember reading about this. I remember hearing that Square and Nintendo basically had a falling out, that it was just a bad working relationship in general. They just never got along. Nintendo was way too controlling, as we know. They were way too controlling with their various IPs, and Square couldn't do what they wanted to do with it. And then finally, they were just like, we're just done. And then they parted ways. And that's why they went over to Sony, because Sony promised them a lot more freedom to do what they wanted to do. So there was a lot of bad blood between Square and Nintendo at that time. That's why Square stayed away from Nintendo for so long and didn't put any of their games on Nintendo systems for many, many, many years. Because they could have. There wasn't a non-compete clause or anything. Like, Nintendo had a non-compete clause on their systems. If you put a game out on a Nintendo system, you couldn't put it out on the Sega Genesis. You know what I mean? But Sony didn't have that clause. So they could have easily put something on the N64. They could have put something on, some of these other systems, but they didn't, because they were freaking pissed at Nintendo. And stayed that way for quite a long time. Really up until about, gosh, I guess like the Wii. Even then, they barely put anything on the Wii. It's really just been like the Switch now. Like, that's it.
Yeah, and now kind of the limiting factor is the technology gap, I guess. Can things be ported over to the Switch, for example?
Yeah.
Recently,
Or the
Visions of
Alarmo.
Mana, I'm like, or the Alarmo.
Oh,
Do you know
God.
about the alarm clock?
I saw the alarm clock. I saw that, and I was like,
Okay.
who's gonna buy this?
Well, I did.
Did you buy it?
I did.
Oh, gosh. Oh my gosh.
It was my birthday, and I was like, I'm gonna buy it for myself. It was good.
You can,
And
you're allowed to just enjoy things. It's okay.
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. Some mornings are more peaceful than others, like the mornings where Zelda says, "Wake up, Link, open your eyes."
Oh.
That's great. But this morning was the Stone Talus or Bokoblin battle, and I was like, "Okay, let's fight." It was quite a morning.
Oh gosh. That's
So
funny.
you get the PlayStation, and you're gonna get into Final Fantasy VII. It hits you in a whole new way. Yeah, as you think back to that first impression of Final Fantasy VII, what is your memory? Did you leave it renewed for the series, or like befuddled? Like, how were you?
I really enjoyed Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
I really thoroughly enjoyed Final Fantasy VII. The music really hit me. The scene of Cloud jumping off the train, doing his little backflip and everything really hit me.
Yeah.
I was kind of confused by it was just going from a 2D plane to a 3D plane was confusing, and as far as a gameplay sense is concerned, figuring out where to go, can I actually climb this ladder, what am I supposed to do and all that. But another theme that really hit me was the environmental theme of all things. I've always been big into the environment and things like that. So seeing them, because most of the plots in Final Fantasy before then were standard save the world. And it is save the world still, but it had this environmental theme. It had this this kind of love theme. It had the loss theme, which I've seen before in Final Fantasy IV, where everybody died, but they didn't really die, and then for Aerith to die, and actually like stay dead, I was really shocked by that. That was a killer moment for me. I'm trying to think about any sort of other moments between them, but like there was a lot of emotional moments in that game with Barrett and Dine and Marlene. There was just a lot of big emotional events that just hit me and just brought me to tears. It really did. Like seeing Cloud in the wheelchair and Tifa pushing him around and everything, and him stuck in the live stream. It was very, very emotional for me. It was a very, very good game. It didn't hit me in the same way as the themes from Final Fantasy IV and VI did,
Sure.
so far as acceptance of yourself is concerned. But there were other themes in Final Fantasy VII that did resonate with me. Yeah.
I love the way that you make content, because you make me excited to play games, not just the games that you're excited about, but just games in general, because of the way that you engage with it, your passion for it, and the way that you break it down. You talked about the emotional moments that lingered with you in Final Fantasy IV and VI and VII, and it really comes through in the way that you describe it in the videos that you make. Is that a conscious decision that you make, or is that something that just happens naturally? And how did your style in making videos evolve to connect with the audience in the way that it does?
I wish that I could say that I mean to do it that way, but I don't. It's just kind of who I am.
Sure.
It just comes natural to me. It's just whenever I talk about these games, it's just something comes over me. I don't know what it is. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like I get so passionate about it. I get so into it. These memories that I have of them just come flooding back into me, and I just think about how I felt about these games as a kid and how excited I was as a kid. And these games, they do make me feel like a kid, and that's what I love. It brings back these great memories, these great times in my life, and I'm really able to just passionately talk about it because it is my passion and it's what I love. And I'm so happy to be able to do that now. And it just makes me happy. And if I can do things to make other people happy, that especially makes me happy.
I'm watching you play like something Knights of the Ogre or some game that I've like never heard of, as I'm kind of reviewing
Tactics Ogre, Knight of the
Tactics
Lotus.
Ogre, yeah. I'm watching you play this,
Ogre.
and I'm like, okay, the way that he's into this is like, I don't necessarily want to play this game, but it made me think. I'm like imagining the backlog of games that I want to play, and I'm like, I should go play a game. I should take the time to go play a game right now because I've earned it, and it's just so inspirational to want to go have fun and experience something. And I just wanted to say thanks for the way that you do that. It's an awesome gift that you share with us and that you take the time to make the videos. And it's just so cool. Has it been something that as you've made the videos and you've gotten feedback and gotten to know people, you feel like you've improved on? And what has really helped you clarify your kind of approach and process in making this content?
Oh gosh. So you brought up an old video. That was an
He
old
did a deep dive for you.
Yeah, that was a Let's Play from way back in the day. But yeah, like I said, I only like to play the games that I like, and I love that game. And it might be obscure, and it might be a little bit archaic by today's standards, but guess what? I like it. So like I like it and I have fun with it. And that's really what matters to me at the end of the day. Am I able to have fun with it? And I want people to have the same joy that I do. You know, I like to be able to come out and spread joy. There's so many channels that you can go to, especially nowadays, where it's all doom and gloom, and let's all talk about how horrible the gaming industry is. And can you believe that they did this, or they contracted with this company, or this is happening with this? And it's like, can't we just have some fun here? This is gaming, for God's sakes, people. My God.
You're not
It's
allowed
not
to have
that
fun.
big. No,
We're not.
God forbid you just have fun. Like, you know, you can go ahead and you could take, you know, one of the most fun games out there, and then people want to, like, you know, somehow crap all over it. And it's like, no, this game is great. I have nothing but fun with it. I don't understand why people have to make such a big deal out of it. Okay, let's take, for example, Metaphor ReFantazio.
Yeah.
Just came out. Fan-freaking-tastic game. I love it.
Okay, I'm
Cannot
glad
get
to hear
enough
that.
of it.
Yeah.
Cannot get enough of it. Turn-based combat, press turn combat system, kind of has like a Persona-esque daytime system, bonding events, all this
Okay,
kind of
cool.
stuff. But people want to go over and all over it because Atlas put out a tweet a couple of months ago that said diversity is their strength. That's all the tweet said.
And that was it.
And if you know anything about the game, that's because there are multiple different tribes in the game, and each tribe, like some tribes are higher than others, some are lower, some are scum of the earth, or the dirt on your shoe, you know, that sort of thing. There's like a caste system or whatever going on. And the party members is a different party member from each tribe. So that's what they're saying. Diversity is their strength. And, you know, these randoms kind of come out of the woodwork. I can't believe they said the D word. Oh my God, diversity. Ugh. But like, can't you have fun? It's a fun game, for God's sakes. Like, what is wrong with just having fun? Like,
Everything,
come
apparently.
on.
Yeah.
Everything.
David,
Yeah,
I've
awesome.
marveled at the way that you work within the comments section. And I do feel like I got to talk about this for a second, because like the ways that you do it is kind of legendary. How, for those that have not, David will address comments.
Yes.
And like sometimes we just leave negative comments unread. You go for it. Talk to us a little bit about that. How did
I
that
read them for
develop?
filth. No, if they're going to come on my channel. So, okay, this reminds me of whenever I taught school. And I would say, you know what? You might live in a democracy, but right now you're in my classroom and it's a monarchy. And I'm king and I rule with an iron fist. And that's the end of my freaking story. So if these people, they want to come onto my channel, they can go to any other multitudes of channels out there. I don't really care where you go to. You go to my channel and you're going to be a little then no, I'm going to read you for filth. And then whenever I'm done letting you know who's in charge and who's right, I'm going to screenshot that. I'm going to post it on Twitter and let the entire world make fun of you too, because you deserve it. You made a public comment. You made fun of yourself. So now let's let everybody enjoy it. That's the way I feel about it. Oh, and then after that, they get banned.
They get banned. Well, you know, there is something to that. You know, I've heard so many different opinions on this. It's like on the one hand, you know, let people speak their mind and all this stuff, but then
they can speak their mind all they want to. Hey, freedom of speech. Go right ahead.
When you move
say what you want to
into
say,
the
but guess what?
level-
I get to say what I want to say too.
Yeah, when you move into that realm of disrespect, is kind of where we have stopped being opinionated. We've now moved into malicious intent.
Yes,
and that's where we have to put an end to it.
Yes,
so
100%. Yes.
Yeah, but anyway, it always makes me laugh when you put somebody on blast. I'm like, oh man, the tea over in the comment section today. And honestly, it makes me say, what was the video? What was the thing that he said?
Yeah.
So-
I mean, I am not one to shy away from an opinion. If I feel something, I will let you know, whether it's a positive opinion, a negative opinion, whatever. I will let you know how I feel about something. And y'all can let me know how you feel in the comments too. But if you're gonna go crazy, I can go crazy too. So
that's fair. That's fair. Well, that's one of the
crazy
things that
street goes both ways. Yeah.
One of the things that I love about your content, honestly, is because I know that when I go to your channel to watch a review or your impressions of a game, I'm going to get it straight, right? I'm going to get like the answer of like, did I like this game? What didn't I like about this game? All that kind of stuff. And so I really appreciate that kind of very clear sort of I like what I like mentality from you. That's great.
Well, I think
I've been playing games for a long time, so I know exactly what's good, what's bad, what works, what doesn't work, and I will let you know.
Well, I think it's probably time for us to model some good conversation and maybe a healthy get to knowing of each other in the comments section of our minigame stretch break. So before we get started talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, let's have that minigame stretch break, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's that time in the episode. It's our minigame stretch break, which means with our guests, we're going to get a little stretch in. So everybody, I don't know if you've had your workout yet today or not.
Not yet.
Not yet. Get a good
it's up
stretch.
next.
Okay, maybe David doesn't stretch.
Okay,
Maybe
okay.
No stretching for David. But
The
David,
lats.
David, why don't you just, okay. David!
Inspiration for the gym.
Yeah, for real inspiration for the
Oh
channel.
my god.
This is our minigame intimidation break. And no, listen. Oh, good. This is a part of the episode where we get to know each other and get inspired to work harder on our physique. And so
I'll be going to the gym right after this, actually.
Games before games.
There
That's
it is. There it is. So I have our bingo wheel of vulnerability. Wade has some questions, and then we are going to pick a number, and that's going to determine our question that we'll discuss with David. But before we do, like every week, we have to hit that theme music. 3, 2, 1.
Oh. Dun, 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 dun. That was beautiful.
Yep, no rehearsal. That's it. It's perfect.
We just go for it.
We just go for it. So I have the bingo wheel of vulnerability. I have numbers 1 through 50 in the bingo wheel. David, as our guest, you will get to choose the first number. Why are you laughing so hard? What happened?
7. We're on the Final Fantasy 7 theme. We'll go with 7.
All right, Final Fantasy 7. Wade, what's your number?
17.
17. I like to pick one number off of Wade so that if it gets right, he was so close. So I'm going to take 18. So we have 7, 17, and 18. Here we go, David. When you are ready, you can tell me when to stop, and I will stop and grab a ball. Oh, one fell out. Hold on. For transparency's
use
sake,
that one.
It has been completely
This is the one you want? The one that fell out?
Sure.
4. Number 4.
Hey, I was the closest.
You were the
Yay.
closest.
Really close. Yeah, you were really
well
close.
done.
So go with the flow. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, whatever. I'm just happy I'm not choosing a bingo ball in my underwear, so there you go.
That can change.
Yeah.
So this question. Okay.
That's the minigame stretch break after dark.
Yes.
This is called the banquet. Every person you have.
Did you introduce the question cards?
It's time to introduce the question cards. I think that these are like audience favorite. They are Chuck Klosterman's Hypotheticals 50 questions for insane conversations. Okay,
I'm
I
ready.
use these in my class. They are amazing. So
Buckle up,
anyway,
everybody. This is
Buckle up,
this is
everybody.
the question deck that I have no idea what's going.
You never know. You never know. It's not about video games. This one particularly is not. But we're going to get a little vulnerable. Every person that you have ever dated with is invited to a banquet where you are the guest of honor. No one will be in attendance except you, the collection of your former flames, and the catering service. After the meal, you're asked to give a 15-minute speech to the assembly. What do you talk about?
Oh my gosh. Are they allowed to talk back, or they just have to listen? Is there like an evaluation form at the end?
It does not say.
I would talk about me. I would talk about me, and I would go around the table and I'd say, "Hey, why didn't you choose me? What is my major malfunction? Why?"
Oh no.
And also, what are you doing now in your life? You could have had me. Could have been better. Could have been better. But no, you said no. You didn't choose me. I don't know what's wrong with you.
I like that you went aggressive.
I would. Oh, yeah.
Your Lizzo arc. You could have had
no, ma'am.
David.
Yeah. I have been with some people in my time. Yeah. And I would let them know. I mean, might as well. Yeah.
I think mine would be a 15-minute apology tour.
Oh God. No.
I have a lot. I've grown a lot as a person, I'd like to think, and I've had a lot to apologize for over the years. So to all those that I've dated and wronged, my apologies. I'd like to think I'm better now.
I think I'd open with a joke. I don't know what the joke would be, but I think that it would have to be like, something to just kind of break the ice. It would be something like that. Like, how much does a polar bear weigh? Enough to break the ice.
There's only one.
Oh my God.
There's only one cold open when all your exes are at a speech that you're giving, and it's, I bet you're all wondering why I've gathered you here today.
Yes.
And then I
oh my God.
throw down a bunch of weapons and say, fight.
It might be one of those things where I say to him, who here thinks that you've got the worst story about me? Do we just want to go around the table?
I don't want that conversation to ever happen. If anyone
that
I've dated ever
nice
finds
about
this video, like this has never happened. Like, please. Actually, you know what? If anyone that I've dated actually watches this video, text me. Like, I have the same number. I want to hear from you. How you doing? Like, I hope your life is good.
Put it in the comments.
In the comment section, because I want to read this. Yeah, 100%. We all want to read this. I'm here for the drama. I'm here for the tea. I will post that shit on Twitter. We'll all read it. It'll be great.
I love it. David, no. Well, listener, thanks for participating. For you, as you gathered all your exes into one room, think about, what amends would you make? What tea would you spill? What ish would you talk if you had 15 minutes in front of your exes? And I try to leave with something a little more reflective. So I'll say this. In your minigame stretch break, as you stretch your body and your emotional history, reflect on some of the choices and paths that you've traveled on that help you arrive at the person and place that you are today. Reflect on the decisions that you made and decisions that others made and the impact that it's had on you, the lasting things that you want to take away that have helped you improve. Let's reflect on those things and allow them to be appreciated and something that we take a hold of and we carry with us. And for those things that we wish we need to forget and the lessons that we've learned from our less favorable experiences or the ways that we've been hurt, let's revisit that with the appreciation that we don't have to deal with that anymore. And with that, let's get back into the episode.
Yep.
All right, so let's get into Final Fantasy VII, more specifically Remake and Rebirth. David, you have been a lifelong Final Fantasy fan. You played Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation, have kept up with the series. Talk to us about your impressions of the Remake trilogy. I guess Remake first, then immediately once you played Rebirth.
So my impressions of... So when it was first... Let me go back to when it was first announced. When it was first announced and they talked about remaking it, I was like, oh, this is really freaking cool. They're going to remake Final Fantasy VII. It's about freaking time they're going to remake Final Fantasy VII. They've only been saying that they're going to be remaking it for a year and a freaking day. Then they said, well, we're going to split it into 3 parts. And I'm like, really? You're going to split it into 3 parts? Seriously? Like what? Like, I was not a fan of that. Then they said that the very first part was going to be just Midgar. And I'm like, yeah. So... I don't know about y'all, but in the original version of the game, there were some good portions of the game and some bad portions of the game, just like there is in every single game. And you know what portion I really couldn't frickin' stand? Midgar.
It was Midgar. Really?
Huh. I hated Midgar.
David, that's so wild to me.
I couldn't wait to get out of Midgar. In fact, whenever I first got out of Midgar, and then after the calm flashback, which lasted 20 minutes or so, I made like 10 saves on a memory card, so I'd never have to go through Midgar again.
Oh my God, like my 2 favorite parts of the original game.
Oh, this is going to be so great. I love this. Keep going.
Yeah. So, like, because to me, it was
childhood to shreds.
Like, you know, it was interesting, but just something about something about not being able to go on the world map, something about being locked into very specific parties for very specific portions of the game I didn't like.
The music was so moody.
Yeah,
It
and
was
it was like
moody.
it was dark and it was depressing and all that. You know, you have the bombings going off, you have the plate dropping, you have people dying, you have Shinra overhead looking down upon you. I'm like, this is like so just like you just felt so like pressed down upon, you know, like the boot, like the boot of the heel is on your neck the whole time, and you couldn't like get out. And then whenever you're out in the world map, and you are able to use the PHS, and you're able to change your party to whatever party you want to. You're able to go where you want to on the world map. You're really able to kind of go out and grind and, you know, grind it for weapons and go around town and look around and explore and things like that. That's the part of the game that I really like. That's my favorite part of the game, not this kind of just Shinra's up there, you're gonna get killed, you know, these people living in the slums, you know. It was just like it felt very, very depressing. And I know why they did it. I know why it felt depressing. And it's a good storytelling thing. But to me, I like bright, cheery, upbeat things. And it wasn't bright, it wasn't cheery, it wasn't upbeat, it was very depressing.
So for Remake, for you, with it being exclusively in Midgar, did that change your impression of Midgar? Or was it like, no, this is not any better, it's just the same?
You just played the scene with the cats over and over again because it's the brightest part of
Remake, I mean, I liked it. It was what it was, but it still had the same trappings of Midgar, which I wasn't really that much of a fan of, you know? So, like, the whole time I was like, I'm going to play it. I'm going to beat it, but, like, I want to get to Rebirth. You know, I want to get to Rebirth. I want to get out of this city. I want to keep on going. I want to go. I want to see how this ends because I want to be able to get to part 2. It was the same sort of thing for me, is that I wanted to finish the game so I could get out, so I could get to Rebirth, to the part that I really enjoy.
And you played Remake in 2020 when it came out?
I played it right whenever it came out.
Okay, right on. So you waited 4 years for that, or 4 years for part 2.
We all did.
Like all. We're just making sure, because you're like, I want to get through Remake to get to Rebirth. So
well, I ended up playing it again. So I played it twice.
Yeah,
I played it when it first came out, and then whenever Rebirth was given its I guess release date, like a month before it released or whatever it was, I played it again to kind of refresh my memory on everything. So yeah, I have played it twice, so I couldn't have hated it that much. And it's not that I say that I hated it or anything, it's just that it's not as bright or as cheery or as, you know, like it was kind of like I was talking about earlier with my childhood, where I needed an escape and I liked bright, happy, colorful things. And my world was dark enough. I didn't need the game to be
That's a really good point to kind of make. And, you know, with a Remake, you know, there aren't, for you, there's not a lot of strong memories of Midgar. And so I imagine some of the changes they made to Midgar, did you find it like vilely offensive? Did you find it just like, okay, like, I didn't like this part of the game anyway, I'm waiting for part 2? Like, what?
No, it wasn't that way. I was very interested, and I liked how they fleshed it out.
Okay.
I enjoyed the wall market scenes. I enjoyed the cross-dressing, whatever. I enjoyed all that. I thought it was funny. I thought it was hysterical. It is what it is. You know,
Did you feel like it was in good taste? The wall market update, did you feel like it was good?
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah. I feel like people can... You can either take something as it is and you can enjoy it and you can just laugh with it, or you can look for ways to be offended about it. And I would much rather just laugh with it because it was just funny, you know, just look at the bright side of things. That's how I tend to take most things, tend to interpret most things, is just in a, because again, I don't want to be miserable. Like, there's enough misery in the world. Like, I don't want to be miserable in a video game. More important things to be miserable about, you know?
it really makes sense why the Midgar section then is like, hey, this isn't really doing the escapism. Like I live in Shinra,
Yeah, exactly. I
Um,
already have parents right over me with their boot on my heel. You know
the
what I mean?
plates, the whole
Yeah.
deal. It really does make sense. Well, you get into Rebirth then.
Yeah.
Although
Um,
before we do, I have
okay.
a few. I want to connect a few dots here. I feel like I just like no.
No. Go.
That's one of the things that we talk about, Wade and I talk about often, and we don't talk about it a lot on the actual interviews that we really love about this format and why we take the time to have the personal conversations before we frame the perspective on an experience with these games, is because the reasons why someone has an opinion or experience with the different sections of this game are so contextual to what our experiences were at the beginning. Because you're one of the few people that we've talked to that didn't particularly like that section. So you have a bit of a unique perspective. And that opinion disconnected from the context in which you've experienced it would be unrecognizable because it would just be one reason or the other. The one thing that I want to talk about and get your opinion on as we kind of move into Rebirth is just the change in the mechanics of the games. Because you talk a lot about the mechanics of what it's like to play the game, being able to equip the items and how you like to explore and the combat and how it makes you feel and whether it's engaging with you tactically and whether you're just kind of having fun. Before we talk about some of the specifics of the story of Rebirth, I wonder if you could give your thoughts on just the kind of way that they updated how you play the game, how you fight, how you run around the world, the exploration, that they updated the graphics and they updated the controls and some of the options that the player has and your experience with them in Remake and Rebirth in general. And then we could talk about all your thoughts about the fun, bright, cheery exploration of Rebirth.
So that's actually what I liked the best about it was how they updated it, because in the original Remake, it seemed like whenever you were going around exploring, it was very linear. You had the one path, you had the one dungeon that you could go through and explore. But whenever Rebirth came around, you had these massive, massive open regions that you could explore, and that was my favorite part. I love the synergy attacks. I love the upgrade there. I love all the new materials that you can use and everything else, and really just being able to experiment and being able to use more party members. That was another limitation in Remake, was that you could really only use like 5 party members. You know, you couldn't even use Red 13 for God's sakes. You know, so being able to use more party members just really opened up a lot more opportunities, a lot more variety. And not to harp on 16, but I might as well, speaking of variety, I felt like there was a very big missed opportunity in Final Fantasy 16 to not allow Jill and Torgal to be fully controlled party members, that you can utilize all 3 of them in the same way that you could utilize Clive. And I felt very limited in Remake insofar as you could only control certain characters. And I felt like the character that was best to control was Cloud at all times. And I feel like they balanced the characters a little bit better in Rebirth to make it so that you'd want to control other characters there and be able to really experiment. Yeah, if that answers your question, hopefully.
Yeah, totally. Well, it's such a different way to engage with the game, and how you overcome the story challenges in the combat is a lot more dynamic than some of the turn-based opportunities of the predecessor. So most people don't have a lukewarm opinion on some of those changes. Everybody's kind of like one or the other. There's not a lot of people that kind of fall in the middle. So it sounds like you really enjoyed that experience. Wade, I'll cut you loose now on the Rebirth. Sorry.
Oh, that's great. No, it's great to hear those things because I know that you love a lot of vintage classic RPGs. And so
Those
I
are my
was really,
favorites.
I know they are. And like, I have a very, very special place in my heart for them as well. And so I really wondered how you would take to Remake and Rebirth after years of beloved, former Final Fantasy eras and stuff. So, but it sounds like you transitioned really well. You just as far as the gameplay and all of that kind of stuff. Is that accurate, or do you feel like
It did, but there's also a part of me that feels like I wish it was turn-based. Like, let me just come out and say
You
it.
can
I
say
wish
it.
it was turn-based. I wish it was turn-based.
Yeah.
Because the original was turn-based, and I love turn-based games, and I don't know if they accurately portrayed the combat by making it action-based. I feel like Whereas in the original game, you could use materia just as well as you could sit there and attack or whatever, and you could use materia during regular battles. I feel like whenever it's action and whenever they changed it, 90% of the time you're just going to be physically attacking, and materia is going to be reserved just for the boss fights. Or bringing in someone like Aerith as a caster or whatever is going to be reserved just for the boss fights. Whereas she could have really been, utilized much better in the original game, in the turn-based game. And then certain things were just kind of like dropped, or you don't really need to pay that much attention to it any longer. Whereas in the first game, in the original, you really had to pay attention to your materia setup and get everything right and have the correct elemental materia junctioned to whatever you were doing. You had to really pay attention to all that. And I feel like they kind of were just like, oh, that's too complicated for the new aged modern gamer. Let's just make like equipped all and then just call it a day. And it's just like, I know what they're trying to do, and I know that they're trying to make it quicker, but there's something to be said for fiddling around in a menu. There's something to be said for that. And it's actually, to me, one of the more fun parts is fiddling around in that menu and really kind of discovering the different combinations and what makes it work and why it works. And I enjoy that. And let's bring up Final Fantasy VIII. I'm not the biggest fan of Final Fantasy VIII out there, but I will say this. The junction system, freaking cool.
There's a lot of min-maxing.
There's a lot of stuff that you can do in the menu of Final Fantasy VIII and really make those characters your own. I remember whenever I played Final Fantasy VII back in the day, I didn't like it that everybody could do everything. So I actually I have a folder, I can probably go grab it right now, where I gave everybody a job class, like Cloud would be a paladin, and he would be able to have lightning and cure magic and healing and revive. Yuffie would be the ninja, and she would get like throw and steal and things like that. Tifa would be the monk, and she would have like healing and chakra or whatever. Aerith would be the caster, and I think I made Kate Sith a caster because Aerith would die. So those two were the casters.
Kate Sith, the Aerith replacement,
Yeah, exactly. Red was the dog. He had the fire magic, you know? So everybody had their own classes and stuff. I think I made Barrett like a tank. He was the only one able to equip like the HP up stuff in the cover, that sort of stuff. So it made like a class system. And you really can't do that in an action RPG.
It's so interesting that you say all of these things, because I can tell that you and I have very similar gaming origins, because I did the exact same thing with my materia makeups. Cloud was always paladin, a little bit of healing and some lightning, the whole deal that you just said. That's hilarious. But even in Rebirth, I found that my first playthrough, I think I played on dynamic normal mode or whatever, dynamic mode. I tried to keep those same classes. I don't know why. I guess because Tifa summons a dolphin for a limit break. I gave her water-based ice spells.
There you go. Yeah.
It just kind of worked in my head canon. I will say that I'm currently playing through on hard mode, and the materia management is almost vital in that. And I almost wish that could have been my first playthrough, because I don't know how they would do it because of the difficulty and level high spikes. But that is the level of management that I really, really missed. I think my first time. So.
I thoroughly enjoy going on through and spending time and making sure that my characters are as good as they could possibly be. But again, like whenever I felt like I was playing this action RPG, I'm just like, why bother? I'm just going to attack 90% of the time anyway. You know what I mean?
That the turn-based mode, like, did you play with the turn-based combat thing? Turn it on, try it for a couple
I tried it, but all it did was just slow everything down. And I'm like, why would I? It felt the same, just slower. And I'm like, this doesn't really do.
Why would I do it that way?
I played with a lot of the difficulties combined with the modes, and I found that the most because I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and get back down to the feeling of what it felt like to sit in combat in these early Final Fantasy.
And the thing is, it sucks that you have to go and you have to change the core gameplay of the game just to get that Final Fantasy feeling back.
Because it was turn-based and story mode that made me feel that way. Because that was the end of the combat. Because the fights would take forever otherwise. It literally took forever. But I had a lot of fun with it for a couple hours, actually.
I mean, I had fun with it too. I really enjoyed the game. I'm just saying that, I mean, well, while we're discussing it, we might as well discuss this portion that I feel like I just wish that it did it better, I
Well,
guess.
there's the reality of the thing, and there's the reality of your experience, and then there's what you believe to be the spirit of what was fun about it for you. And with 20 years removed from the original game, the way that we play games and the technology has shifted a lot, and the challenge that's in front of them is vast because people have various stories and they have attachments and things that are important to them about this story. And so they're not just translating the story of the game, they're also attempting to translate the spirit of the game that everyone appreciated and experienced. And so I think it's fair to look at the ways that we interacted with it and say, you know what, like for me and the things that I enjoyed, this was a little bit lacking. I don't really know if there's a path forward, how they could have done it differently without making a different game. But I think it's
they'd have to. Yeah.
No, yeah. It's a fair discussion, and you guys illustrate the point really well because you are approaching it from a deep love and appreciation for Rebirth. Wade, I know that you want to get into some of the story beats and some of the decisions that they made there. Where do you want to start?
Well, I'm most interested in when you were playing the original Final Fantasy VII, you've said that the game picks up for you after Calm. And even from a thematic freedom sort of standpoint, getting to go anywhere and the story and all that kind of stuff. I'm really curious, how did Rebirth feel to you as you leave the flashback of Chapter 1, moving into Calm and the grasslands?
It felt like the game that I always wished that it would be. It really felt like it felt like a whole different universe. You know, it felt just so alive to me. There was so much to see, so much to do, so many different places to go to, and that's what I love. I love being able to go out and explore.
Yeah.
And I know that there was a lot, and I know that some people are like, Chadley wouldn't shut up or whatever, and yeah, he wouldn't. But like to me, it's just like going out and having fun and seeing what they put out in this world.
Yeah.
That I was really able to go out and do that, and that was so fun to me. I really enjoyed that. I loved going to each and every new town, arriving in a new place. And whenever something like small happened in the original game, they completely expanded upon it. And like it blew my mind. It really blew my mind. One thing that I hate to be, negative Nancy here, but one thing, if we're going to talk about things that they could change, I felt like sometimes though, although you're going out and you're exploring and you're having a great time and you're wanting to explore more, then you hit a brick wall of mandatory mini games. And it really bugged me, especially in Costa del Sol. That was just like, oh my God, can't I just buy a swimsuit? Why do I have to
No, you must not.
No, I was like,
I
come
want
on.
to go to Pac Sun, okay? I just need it.
God. Yeah, but I mean, otherwise, I thought it was like, even like Cosmo Canyon
Yeah.
with like the balloons and everything coming up and all this. Like,
Yeah.
it was so freaking cool.
Yeah.
It blew my mind. I loved it. And I liked how they did like an open chapter where you have the world, and then you had like your town and dungeon chapter where it was more, controlled or whatever. And then you open and then you're controlled, then open and controlled. So you were, it wasn't too overwhelming and it wasn't too linear. I think that they did a really good job balancing that in the game.
What did you notice about some of the places that you went? We talked a little bit about how Part 1 Remake is all about the oppression, the suffering of Shinra, and I've heard it said that Rebirth is kind of like the response to the suffering, the oppressive, aggressive forces in the world, and how cities and villages kind of cope with that. Was there a taste of some of that sense of escapism that you noticed in the stories and themes of some of these cities? And how did those things impact?
That's, I think, what I like about it so much is that you have Midgar. And Midgar is the biggest city in the entire world, and it's so oppressive and it's so horrible. It's horrible for the environment, and it's just so different from the rest of the world. You have the people of Midgar, and they have this one overwhelming philosophy, this one way that they feel like everybody should live, and then you go to the rest of the world and nobody else wants to live like the people in Midgar.
Hmm.
Nobody really wants that, but Midgar is kind of forcing their lifestyle upon these other towns and villages,
Hmm.
and they're doing their best to resist that, but because they are so strong and powerful, they can only resist so much, and you feel bad for these people. You feel bad for them, so you feel like you need to do your best to help them. Like North Corel is a great example of
Yeah.
that. You know, it was a thriving, bustling town. People got along, everything was great. And then Midgar came in, Shinra came in, and they made them these promises. You know, you're going to be rich, you're going to be great, you're going to build this reactor, it's going to be wonderful. And then it literally, quite literally, blew up in their
Yeah.
faces. And now they're living with the repercussions of allowing Shinra and Midgar into their lives.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's kind of like an allegory of the world, you know? We can't just let people live their own lives. We feel like we have to impose our own belief systems on other people, even if they don't want those belief systems imposed upon them.
Hmm. That's such an interesting way of looking at this particular game because each one of these cities in the game, including, I mean, even Cosmo Canyon, which is supposed to be this kind of like bastion of peace, tranquility,
Yeah.
and communion with the planet,
Environmental paradise.
even they are struggling with this commercialization
Yeah.
sort of thing of like, this is what will make us money. This is what is going to bring in new pilgrims into this arena and stuff. And so I think it is a fascinating way of looking at this. The suffering that the party is trying to address and
It's
the
almost an
suffering.
imperialistic
Yeah.
colonialism sort of thing. You know, it really
And,
is.
and when you look at it that way, the mini games become almost this meta narrative of saying the people are doing all that they can to try to escape from the reality of this.
Mhm.
Is it overdone? Maybe that's the point, right? Like
Maybe.
the ways that we do that. Now, that is a wild justification of some of the pacing issues that people have, I suppose. But I do think that there's commentary on that sort of thing, and I think that there's something to be said there.
Fluffy visitor.
We have a
Sorry.
dog in the stream. Oh my
Mickey.
God. What do you think about the patient
So
little
big.
guy? Oh, hi. You want to say hi?
Oh.
My name. I'm.
Oh.
Look at them. Oh, I
Hey,
do.
baby.
I do wonder what it is about the open world and the way that you're allowed to experience the pacing of the story compared to the remake, and how that kind of impacted you. Because you said it was kind of on rails, right? You felt the pressure and
It
it was
was. I
overwhelming.
felt it was on rails at
Yeah,
least.
I mean, I think
you
I think
know?
it's fair to say it is a lot more linear than you would expect coming from
Yeah.
some of the other games, and it really does open up. But for a lot of folks, they experience the story beats at their own pace, right? You can
I mean,
choose to linger or you can choose to move
yeah.
on. How was that experience for you as somebody who's a really seasoned RPG?
Like, I mean, obviously, you can experience the story beats on your own time as well, but for me, there was no reason to linger. There was nothing that would keep me going back to, say, the sewer dungeon
Mm.
or, you know, whatever. There was no reason to. Whereas in Rebirth, there was a reason to go out. There was a reason to go explore. There was a reason to do all the various things. You know, there was more summons that you could find. There was the little towers that you could unlock.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Treasures that you can find, the discoveries. There was so much to see and do that wasn't in the original remake. So I guess to me it's less about the enjoyment of discovery, and I
Mhm.
felt like there wasn't that much enjoyment of discovery in remake as compared to Rebirth. There
Oh,
was
yeah.
just so much more joy there.
I would
That's
agree
what-
with that.
Yeah.
100% actually, because you're right. There was no compulsion to go back to some of these places, and it was limited. You couldn't
Yeah,
go back
it was
to a
limited.
lot of
Yeah.
these places.
Yeah.
And that's what surprised me on my second playthrough of Rebirth. My first playthrough was 175 hours long. Okay, I took my sweet time
I think I
on
went
that
through
one.
like 90.
Yeah, and even those that kind of try to go through it pretty quickly for whatever reason, like it still takes them a very long
It
time
takes
to get through
quite
it.
a lot. It's quite a lot.
It's it's not. I think that if you watch all the cutscenes, it's like 40 hours. So I mean,
Yeah.
add gameplay to that, and you're going to double it. But when it comes to Rebirth, that replayability of coming back on my second playthrough, I'm just discovering things. For
Yeah.
example, I think I mentioned on a previous show that you can go back to the grasslands during chapter 4 with Junon, and you can see the grasslands at sunset. I didn't know that my first time. It's like, oh well, that's a really cool
That is
sort of
cool.
segment, right?
That is
And so it's little things like NPC dialogue that's going to change after some event happens. What do they say now in light of that?
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that I always loved about the original game, where you could go places and like there is a reaction to the world.
That's
It makes
my
me
favorite thing about RPGs, really, is that moment that you get the airship or whatever mode of transit that you get, where you can just go back around the world and really explore. And this brings me into a prediction that I have for the third part. So I made a whole video about this back months ago before other people talked about this. And here's what I think that they're going to do. And I think it makes a whole lot of sense, is that they're going to pick up, and maybe the first chapter or two will be linear until you get to the high wind. And then you're going to get the airship, and you're going to be able to go to everywhere you want to, whenever you want to. And it's just going to be like Final Fantasy VI World of Ruin.
Oh,
you know,
that would be so cool.
Yeah, it's going to be going around, and hey, these are all the places you can go to. These are all the side quests that you can go to. This is all the dungeons that you can go to. And then whenever you're ready to go and finish the game, hey, just like you can land at Kefka's Tower, you can go ahead and parachute on into Midgar and begin the end game.
Wow, that would be really interesting.
I think that would be so freaking cool.
Especially because at that moment, when you get the high wind, the meteor is already summoned. It's in the sky, and it's going to change the way that you revisit Cosmo Canyon and all these other places. They're going to be like, well, that's
World of Ruin sort of thing with the meteor.
What a great way of reintroducing those places you've already been, so it's not just rehashing.
We just came up with 2 new names for the third game. We talk all the time about what are they going to call the third game, and now we're going to call it Rehash.
Rehash. I like it.
Final Fantasy VII Revisit.
Those are good names, I think. So when it comes to part 3, Rebirth has left a lot of things kind of on the table as far as, will they, won't they, what's going to happen next. With the overall story of Rebirth, before we get into future predictions and things like that, what worked for you? What didn't work for you from a story standpoint?
Things that worked for me, I liked the emotional, heart-wrenching moments that were there, and they were allowed to be there, such as Dine's death. I thought that was really, really good. What didn't work for me was immediately following that.
You're gonna say
the most ridiculous thing was Palmer, I think, is like coming after you or whatever, and Jason or whatever. And I'm like, can't I just kind of process what just happened? With Dine and everything else. Just some things that worked for me was actually I liked going on the ship and doing the Queen's Blood tournament. Over to Costa del Sol. I thought that was a really cool chapter. What didn't work for me was immediately following that having the wall of minigames. And I'm like, what?
It was a vilely offensive thing. I get it.
It's a wall of minigames. Speaking of wall of minigames, what didn't work for me was going to Golden Saucer and then saying, hey, let's go visit around. By the way, whenever you say to visit, what that really means is talk to every single freaking person and play every single freaking minigame. Didn't work for me.
Gotcha.
Things that did work for me was kind of the reimagining of what is going on. Just, I guess, the mystery. The mystery of what is going on with the Whispers. Because you could just play the game and have the exact same story unfolding in front of you, and you know what's going to happen. I, for one, am happy that I do not know what is going to happen.
Ooh, okay.
In the third part. I don't want to know. I don't want to be spoiled. It's nice to not know. Do I think that they did it properly towards the end? No. But I like not knowing, if that makes sense. I like the mystery. I like the discussion of it all, I guess.
So what do you think's going on in the ending of Rebirth? With Aerith, with Zack, all of that.
And say it definitively with no doubt.
With conviction. Spoil it for people.
Gosh. So I think that there are, I guess, two dimensions, I guess, for lack of a better term. There is a timeline, I suppose. There's a timeline where Zack is alive. There's a timeline where Zack is dead. There's a timeline where Aerith is alive. There's a timeline where Aerith is dead. I don't know if these timelines are going to merge into one. I don't know if they're going to do some fan servicey thing and say like, oh yeah, he's alive now. She's alive now. She's going to make it. What I think is going to happen is that she will not be part of your party in the third part. But then whenever you are able to finally defeat Sephiroth, the ending itself might change, and she might magically appear out of the ether or something, and then she'll be alive, and they all live happily ever after. Hell, maybe she'll be alive, and Zack will be alive. She's like, oh yeah, my first boyfriend. Bye, Cloud. See ya. And then we get back with Zack. You know, you never know. But I think that honestly, no matter what they choose to do, they're not going to make the fans happy. They've kind of put themselves between a rock and a hard place. If she dies, they're going to say, you know, oh, they're just following the same story that the first time, you know, why even bother bringing these whispers in if they're not going to do anything with it? If she lives, they're going to say, they're only doing this because people complained on Reddit.
Right.
You know, you should just tell the story that you want to tell. Don't listen to these people on the internet. No matter what they choose to do, someone's going to be pissed. You know, this is the internet after all. God forbid anybody happy. You know, so
not allowed to be happy. Not allowed.
Not allowed to be happy. Not allowed.
That's where Square Enix brings you in to handle the comments.
Just put them on blast.
David, put them on blast. Get them.
What would be important for you in the story, in your experience, if this was to feel like a satisfying conclusion to the trilogy? What would be important for you personally?
Oh gosh.
Everyone else, forget them.
I personally, I guess, I would like her to live. You know, I think that a happy ending would be nice. You know, I like happy things. I like happy games. But there's also a part of me that says, you know, that wasn't the original story. That's not what it's supposed to be. It's about loss. It's about feeling that something is missing. And they purposely did this in the game by giving you one character who was good at casting magic, one magical character, and then they killed her off. They purposely did it so that you knew that you had a hole in your party, that you were missing something. It wasn't just another fighter that was gone. She was an integral part of your party, and they took her away, and you still had to make do without her. So
do you feel like in the in-between they did that? I'm sorry to interrupt, but like there was an emotional void that was left with Aerith that I think was similar to the gameplay experience that was left in the first one. And you're making me think about it in a different way in the way that you answered that. Do you feel like they traded or could trade some of that emotional presence from the depth of the character with the voice acting and the interactions to simulate the loss that you felt in the gameplay aspect?
I personally really enjoy her as a character. I really, really do. She was one of my favorite characters growing up. I related to her because I guess I relate to characters who, kind of like Terra, are torn between two things. You know, she's ancient, but she's a human, but she's the last of her kind, but she's a mystery. She doesn't know who she is. She has these strange powers. She's different. She's different from everybody else, and she doesn't necessarily fit in. And I related to that as part of her character. I related to being somebody who's different and didn't fit in. So emotionally, she is one of my favorites. I really do enjoy her character. I enjoy what she's able to do. I do enjoy what she brings to the table. So yeah, there is a whole emotionally with her because, not to get into shipping wars or anything, but I do feel, yeah.
that is like the one off limit topic that
we'll talk about anything, but that's a tough one.
Ridiculous. Yeah. So we'll just say I enjoy her character. Then we'll just say that. Leave it there. Then. God, I've seen these shipping wars on Twitter. Oh my god, crazy.
Yeah, I've gotten pulled into a couple times.
Stop!
It's just one of those things in the community, but people are passionate about it, right? And one of the things that I like about what they're doing with this one is that they are exploring different facets of the fandom, things that that matter to somebody out there. So for the person that, their ride or die for Final Fantasy VII was all the mini games, well, we got you covered, baby.
Oh boy.
And boy, do we. And then for those that really do get into this relational dynamic, you've got some interesting dynamics there in Rebirth and stuff. I'm really curious how part 3 is going to be. I'm like you. You do feel that void in the original game, even from the party menu when you've got just 8 characters and 9 slots. It just feels
she's
wrong.
Gone. Yeah, she's gone, and she's always
thought about that a lot.
Always see that blank slot, and you know that
she could have been there. She should have been there.
Yeah, she should have been there. And then there's that moment in the back of your mind: is she going to get revived?
Yeah.
Is there some way that I'm going to get her back? Am I eventually going to get her back? And then you don't.
And we will be experiencing that anew. Even those of us that know the original story, we're going to think, is there a way for me to get her back, even temporarily? Because at the end of Rebirth, she joins your party to play, to fight against Sephiroth, with Cloud. And so there is that kind of question lingering. And what is that going to look like? So when it comes to part 3 for you, to really stick the landing, there's some level of emotional resonance. You want Aerith maybe to live. Is there a way for Aerith to die and yet for you to still have that sense of happy ending that you look for in the game?
You could see some maybe like dream sequence thing or something. But again, I feel like they've already established that there's multiple timelines. So they have to do something with that multiple timeline. They can't just say, hey, there's 2 timelines, but we're only going to do this one timeline and we're just going to drop it. Like they have to do something with that separate timeline. Whether they're going to merge them or not. And I feel like that's where it's going. I feel like they're going to eventually merge the timelines somehow, because that just makes sense to me. I've played enough JRPGs to know. I mean, like I see where this is going here.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know if they're going to merge them at the end of the game. I don't know if they're going to merge them before the end of the game. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if there's going to be a separate storyline. Maybe you're going to have the story that follows Cloud and the rest of the gang, and then another story, like, chapter 3 is over. Okay, chapter 4, guess what? Now we're following Zack and Aerith and their story in chapter 4, and we get to fight with them and play with them in their separate timeline as they try to somehow move their timeline and get back to where they belong, I suppose. So we might be doing like a dual game thing where we
be curious in that.
We do get to play as Aerith and Zack, since they're there and we know that they have a play style and we know that they're controllable. So they should do something with them, but the majority of the game would be with the main cast, and then do maybe every 3rd chapter or whatever, and boom, hey, you're controlling Aerith and Zack now.
Yeah, what if Aerith and Zack's timeline are just minigames? Literally, every time you go there, all you do is play minigames.
Hit start and skip.
It's just a non-stop date.
Skip.
It's just an afterlife.
It's just minigame after minigame. And it's 10 to 20 hours.
Well, then they're not in a separate timeline. They're actually trapped in hell. So...
That's a good point. That's a good point. They're forced to play. What is it? Gadgets and gizmos forever. Whatever. Do you remember that mini game? That's the one that drove me crazy.
It's just mushroom
Is that
picking.
the one where you had to throw the box or something?
No, that was Kate Sith. I didn't mind that one. That was
nightmare.
Kate Sith, basketball star. This was Gears and Gambits. It was in Cosmo Canyon when you have to make the little robot.
Oh,
did you do this part? Yeah.
Oh.
I did not like that one. I've never wanted to be an engineer, and that didn't change my mind. So,
oh no. Ken's an engineer. I'm good.
Just leave that.
I'm good. Yeah.
You should have him do some content.
That's a
on
good idea.
That particular engineering game. Like, what do you
Oh my
think,
God.
Ken?
I know.
Is this for you? Because you're the only person it could be for. Is this for
No
you?
kidding. No kidding. No.
Well, David, any final thoughts about
Yeah.
Rebirth, Final Fantasy VII, any of this stuff as we wrap up today?
Oh, God, this was a fun conversation to have. I was actually very nervous about
Were you?
Oh.
extraordinarily nervous about coming on because I'm like, they get so deep into these topics
Oh,
and
man.
conversations and what's going to go on. It's like they're going to ask me questions that I don't know the answers to. But no, this was great. I had such a fun time
I'm
talking
so
to
glad.
friends
Coming on.
and just kind of like just rehashing the games and talking about
Yeah.
childhood and talking about things that I enjoy. So no, this was great. I like to theory craft. I like to think
Yeah.
about what the future holds. And we don't know. There hasn't been a trailer released. There hasn't been any
Right.
sort of leaks. There hasn't been anything in regards to it at all. We
Yeah.
just know that's probably going to come out sometime in 2027. That's all we really got.
I have to stay
I-
alive till then.
I know, right? Sometimes I think about that. It's like will I
Maybe they'll
make it to the
release
end?
maybe they'll release it as like the 30th anniversary on the same
Oh,
release
yeah.
date as Final Fantasy VII. That would be kind of cool.
They'll only
3
release
games,
30,000
third game.
copies. So
You
that
know,
you can-
third 30
13.
years, do a whole 3 thing. Like we don't really know, but it's fun to talk about. It really is. It's fun to talk about.
It is, and this conversation has reminded me of the fun of video games, and
Yeah.
how cool are video games? Like
Oh.
the fact that we can just like talk about this and enjoy them. It reminds me of like lunch table and playground conversations. It's
Oh, yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
And so this has
It's
been
a whole other world to lose yourself in, to escape into.
Yeah.
You have your real world, and you have your game world.
Yeah.
And you just escape into it. It's fun.
and to know how those video game worlds inform the way that we live our lives. It sometimes gives us the confidence and the courage we need to be ourselves and to step out to try something new. And
It
I love that.
definitely does. A lot of people don't think or don't really realize the impact or power that video games have until you need them in your life, until
Yeah.
you literally, viscerally need them,
Yeah.
and they help you through the real world. Like it's shocking how much they do help. It really
Yeah.
is. It's shocking. Yeah.
Your attitude and your approach and your content gives me permission to have fun. And
Yes.
I didn't realize how much I needed that sometimes.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time to come on. And thank you
Of
for
course.
being you and sharing that with
Yes.
us in this time and sharing
a
that
gift.
with the world. It just means so much to us to get to have this time together. And I just can't thank you enough. This has been so enjoyable. We always like to ask, what's coming up next? Are there things that you'd want to share with folks that they could look forward to? And how can people find your content besides hunting down your Hall of Fame comment section posts? before
Oh
people
gosh
get paid?
almighty. So yeah. Well, we're coming up to the end of the year now, so I am currently working on my awards show. I always do an awards show for the
Nice.
best RPGs of the year or whatever, and I'll do like the best action RPG, the best turn-based,
Okay.
best strategy, the best whatever. And we have one of my most anticipated games coming out really soon, Dragon Quest 3, which I played when I was a little kid in 4th
I
grade.
cannot
That
wait for that
remake
game.
is coming out, and I'm gonna be making so many videos about it. Y'all have no idea.
Oh,
Like
I
I
can't wait.
cannot get enough of this. It's gonna be so freaking cool. So yeah, just more videos, more top 10 lists and reviews, and just fun. Just fun. I like to have fun. That's what I'm gonna be doing over on my channel. I am at David Vinc on YouTube and the David Vinc over on Twitter, as well as other various things. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
we'll make
mainly
sure
where
and
I am.
We will make sure and tag you in all the comments and stuff.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Of course.
And everybody, as we are continuing with the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth lecture series, look forward to more playthroughs as we go through the lecture plays and more content creator interviews as we wind the semester down. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and we will see you in class.
Bye,
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
John Austin.
Thank you so much to David for the interview. Thanks to Husky by the Geek for the use of our theme music. We love it. Thanks to Nick Smith who does our graphics. Let's never eat mackerel again. What a disaster. But most of all, thanks to you, viewer. We really appreciate you tuning in. This program is brought to you by viewers like you. We'll see you next episode. Bye-bye.